I work on the front line with the ambulance service, and our union, Unison, has sent a letter. It's been 3 weeks and it hasn't been replied to, asking the service why it has lowered its standards of PPE to like an apron and a surgical mask, when the World Health Organization clearly says there has to be a fuller apron and FFP3 mask, and they still not replied to our union. And our union sent out a directive yesterday saying staff must be safe and they have every right to demand this equipment and not do jobs if they believe they're unsafe.
I read, you heard me read that text from Amanda, who says she's simply not going to go to work until she feels safer, until she feels that the PPE has been provided. I don't think any of us are going to sit in judgment on decisions like that. They are personal and to a degree they are private. By contrast, of course, we now know of 3 doctors who have lost their lives, while partly, I mean, one frontline worker against COVID-19, but 2 others who've clearly contracted it, probably while going about their work. How much moral wrestling do you do, David? And what happens if you simply decide that you're not going to go into work until your political masters start doing their duty?
Well, I've started my first day of isolation today. I've got symptoms, and
okay.
I phoned my union rep, told it, and I phoned 1 or 2 colleagues, and I feel gutted. I feel let down by my employers. I feel let down by the NHS. I feel let down by my patients and my colleagues, because I know they need me out there as much as I want to be with them. And
so you think you've caught it at work, and you think perhaps that could have been avoided if you'd had the equipment that you needed. I hope you don't hate me for saying this, but there's no way we can know that for sure, is there?
Yes, there's no way. And the symptoms can vary from person to person. It's all the information coming out of Wuhan saying that there's a large amount of people will get very moderate symptoms. They might even just get nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, just a mild cough. And there are some that will get the full-on dry cough, high temperature above 38, and respiratory problems. So it's not, as the television is telling you all the time, it's this, and then you've got it. It can be a lot of different symptoms, and it's
that for me gets filed under forgivable omissions or forgivable errors, because very simply it is so new and it is so unknown. I mean, it's called novel coronavirus for a reason, isn't it? But you're absolutely right. The sheer diversity of symptoms and the suggestion now that I mean, some, and again, you know, I'll read one thing and you probably read another, but 40% of people who may have contracted it displayed hardly any symptoms whatsoever. I was reading a lot this weekend about people losing their sense of smell and losing their sense of taste and displaying nearly no other symptoms.
Well, I mean, there's some reports coming through that the people who lose their sense of smell are the super spreaders. I mean, I don't want to victimise them by their poor symptoms, but there's some facts coming through the Lancet and other things. That it may be that just by through their innocence rather than their ignorance, in that they didn't realise that they had it, and they've been marching around the place, going about their business, and no doubt spreading it as well. So you're now self-isolating for a fortnight. Do you? I mean, and also, mate, I can't believe we're still asking these questions. 7 days before you can get a test. If you've still got a fever, obviously you're not going anywhere. I spoke to a practice nurse yesterday, a very good friend of mine who has had it. She's the first person in my circle who has been tested and confirmed to have definitely had it. She's more or less, well, she is fully recovered, and she reminded me that some of the apparent conflicting evidence can be unravelled. So it's 7 days. You go back to work. Some people say 14, some say 7. That depends on whether or not you've got a fever. But you talk of guilt, and that's because, and this is the bit that the rest of us don't get, David, isn't it? Because what have you got to be guilty about? You've probably caught it while going about your duty, and yet the fact that you can't go about your duty today and tomorrow and for the rest of this week and possibly next week. Yeah, go on. Because I've done this job for 15 years, and people give you a cup of tea and chocolate, and they really show their appreciation sometimes, but it just goes over your head. It's just a job. And the first time that I've done this job, and I really realise what I'm desperately needed and wanted. And it makes me sad.
Because for now you can't be there. Well, would you allow me to suggest that you spend a little bit of time looking in the rearview mirror and reflect upon all the good you've done and all the help you've provided over the last 15 years. And while the situation right now might be more acute than anything, you are needed now, but you've done your bit, David. And you're sick, and this is going to go on for months, and we need you to look after yourself. We need you to take it easy. We need you to rest. And then when you're better, which you doubtless will be, you can get back out there and start slaying these dragons again, my friend. Come on. You've done more in 15 years than most of us will do in an entire lifetime to help the vulnerable and to help the sick. And just because the graphs are going off the scale now doesn't mean you should be beating yourself up for not being able to do more. Give yourself a break for everything you've already done. Please.
But the problem is...
No, sorry.
I can see what's coming. I can see what's coming down the line, and it's not nice. And
no, I know it isn't, which is why it's all the more important that people like you look after yourself. Not just physically, but mentally. Be kind to yourself. Trust me, there'll not be a single person listening to this programme who holds you in anything but the highest regard. And the fact that you now have to self-isolate because you're displaying symptoms is not a ground for guilt, David. It's grounds for some self-care. Get yourself back under the duvet. Look after yourself and get back... Go on.
None of us would be in this job if we didn't want to care for others. That's our whole motive.
Exactly. You'll be back in the game in a week or two. Promise me you'll try to look back over everything you've done rather than beating yourself up about what you can't currently do. Promise me that, please.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
I mean it, David. All right. And there it is.
May I
yes.
add one more thing?
Of course you may.
It really meant a lot to us when we got boxes of chocolates on the dashboard, and when people were so kind to us, giving us free cups of tea out there. It really meant a lot. Thank you for everyone.
Well, we'll all continue to do whatever we can, and I mean, thank you, David. Odd though it sounds, I think that nationwide round of applause probably did a heck of a lot more than anybody realised in advance than it would, and that's something we can certainly do again. But David, you've got me, mate, and it's only 10:30. You've got me right in the fields. Because the idea that you're beating yourself up down there in Croydon when you shouldn't be, it speaks volumes, doesn't it? I just want you to take care, and I mean what I said. Give yourself a break. Think of everything you've done, not what you can't currently do, because I promise you that's how everybody else will be looking upon your service to this country.